We've all been there. The washing machine is beyond repair. And all you want to know is which new model you should buy. Well, that's where the Which Just Buy This recommendations come in. Hand-picked recommendations that our product testing experts think you should buy. We've got over 50 products with a Just Buy This recommendation, from dishwashers to TVs, cordless vacuums to fitness trackers. And yes, it can be useful to spend time reading our in-depth reviews, but when you need a quick fix, a Just Buy This recommendation can save the day. To find out which products have our new seal of approval, just head to which.co.uk/justbuythis. That's which.co.uk/justbuythis. And get it right with Which. Do you know whether or not you have a healthy gut? And could probiotics help you out? Welcome to this podcast from Which. Hello, I'm Rob Lilly-Jones, and welcome to this, our penultimate episode in this series aimed at giving you tips and advice to help you live your best life every day. Now, if this is the first episode of this series that you are either listening to or watching on our YouTube channel, go back and check out the other episodes in the series so far. We've covered everything from multivitamins to magnesium and so much more. So make sure you go back and have a listen or have a watch wherever it is that you are listening or viewing this. But today we are talking about probiotics, and I'm pleased to say that once again for this episode I'm joined by our brilliant experts. Now again we have Which's fantastic public health nutritionist Shefalee Loth. Shefalee, welcome.
Hi Rob.
And as ever we are also joined by consultant dietitian and founder of City Dietitians, Sophie Medlin. Sophie, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It is great to have you both back here for the penultimate episode of the series. We are talking about probiotics. And we're talking specifically here about gut health, aren't we, as well? So what do we mean when we talk about our gut?
Well, our gut is actually a huge organ. And when we're talking about it clinically, we're talking about everything from beyond your mouth all the way down to your rectum and anus. And it's early in a podcast episode to say the word anus, isn't it? But here we are.
People might be listening off the duff, it's fine.
It's a hugely complex bit of kit. It's very long. Your colon itself, so the large bowel, is 1.5 meters long. Then you can have up to 9 meters of small bowel packed into your abdominal cavity. And then we're going up towards the duodenum and then the stomach and then coming up towards the mouth. It's a complex bit of kit. Every few centimeters of it is doing a slightly different job in terms of the absorption of nutrients. It's breaking down of food, all of these important processes. And it really is something that we take for granted until it goes wrong. As someone who's worked in gut health for probably about 15 years now, I think every day about taking the best care of my gut health because I've really seen how badly it can go wrong and how much it affects people's quality of life and things like that. So it's a great episode to listen to try and think about how you can really take care of your gut.
And do people think about it enough?
I mean, I think there's so much more awareness of gut health now, and it's really out there, and it's to blame for absolutely everything and every single symptom that you've got. So I think there's a spectrum, isn't there, of people who we haven't ever thought about their gut health until it goes wrong, and then people who are probably overly obsessing about it and trying to do everything perfectly when that creates more stress and that affects your gut as well. So it is about finding a good balance, as with everything.
It definitely feels like, you can't escape, whether it's, TV, radio ads, social media especially, people talking about gut health, what you can do to improve your gut health. And obviously we are talking about probiotics today, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But especially if we talk about the science then into gut health, and you mentioned, Sophie, the amazing things that our gut can do. It feels like that's really come on leaps and bounds even in the last few years.
Massively, yeah. I mean, when I first started talking about gut health clinically in hospitals and with patients, really we didn't know very much at all about the microbiome. It was, we were still pumping people full of antibiotics and hoping that would solve all the problems, right? So really over the last couple of decades, this research into the microbiome, which is what most people are talking about when they talk about gut health, has come on enormously. And my colleagues who work in research in that area would say we probably still only know about 20% of all the things we'll ever know about the microbiome. So really that research is in its infancy, but interestingly, it's caught on into public interest so massively and into the supplement industry and everything else really too early, in my opinion, for people to be drawing the conclusions that we are at this stage.
And that was the science of the microbiome of your gut. Would you say that gut and microbiome, are they interchangeable phrases or are they two different things?
I think about, when I'm talking about the gut, I'm talking about the structure and the physiological processes that happen within the gut. And then I'm talking about the microbiome separately to kind of gut health. But I do think colloquially, the term gut health has come to mean both the processes that your gut undertakes, but also your microbiome.
And the science then of probiotics, that seems to have come a long way as well.
Yeah, I mean, the science of probiotics has come on enormously, and we've now got different products in that space, prebiotics, postbiotics, which maybe we'll talk more about later. Probiotic research has been done and it's very interesting, but again, it's still pretty early research. It's still in its infancy. And so we do need to understand that the appropriate application of probiotics is a great thing, but we're not at a stage really to say, oh, everyone should be taking them and this is exactly what they're doing and how they're working. We still don't really know.
And actually, I guess I'd add there is that everybody's gut health is different. You know, my gut is totally different to Sophie's and totally different to yours. So it's really hard to have this blanket recommendation of people taking probiotics because there are so many different strains of probiotics. So what works for me might not work for you.
Yeah, it's very much not a one-size-fits-all approach here.
No, but then now because of that partly, I suppose, there's such huge interest in microbiome testing, which is interesting, academically interesting. I've looked at lots of them from research purposes. But ultimately, your microbiome changes, fluctuates every day. So if you did it one day, it would be different to how it would look the next day. If you went through Christmas and changed your diet for a couple of weeks, it would look completely different on the other side of that. And so, as much as there is a lot of consumer interest and a lot of companies coming into this space, the science is new and we need to appreciate that when we're looking at it.
So if we start at the very beginning then, how do you know that you've got a healthy gut?
Really, I think if you're going to the toilet every day and the stool is soft and easy to pass, you're not significantly bloated or gassy to the point where it's painful and uncomfortable, you haven't got really smelly gas, you're not passing any blood in your stools, you're not necessarily feeling nauseous or uncomfortable in your digestion in any way, as long as all of those boxes are ticked, you're actually fine. I think people can become very obsessed with the small changes that happen in your guts and the fluctuations that happen day to day. But in reality, if those boxes are ticked, you're in a relatively good place.
Okay, so the flip side of that then, how can you tell if you have an unhealthy gut?
So the red flag symptoms that we would look for if someone had gut health problems would be blood in the stool. And I don't care if people think, oh, it's probably just hemorrhoids. Go to your doctor if you've got blood in your stool. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter whether you know that you're constipated and therefore are likely to have piles or hemorrhoids. You must go to your doctor if you've got blood in your stools. If you've had what we would call a change in bowel habit, so you've gone from someone who has your bowels open every day to having them open every other day, or the flip side of that, you usually have your bowels open every other day, but now you're having diarrhea lots of times a day, for example. Any change in bowel habit that lasts for more than 2 weeks, you need to see your doctor for. Again, I don't care if you think you know what it's because of. I don't care what your age is. Go to your doctor and talk to them about it. If you can feel any kind of mass in your tummy, so when you have a press around, if you can feel any lumps or bumps in your tummy, you need to go to your doctors. If you're losing weight and you don't know why, you need to go to your doctors. So those are our red flag symptoms. And candidly, those are red flag symptoms for bowel cancer. So your GP should then do a bowel cancer screening protocol on you and make sure there's nothing sinister going on. If it's not that, but you're still having symptoms, then we would want to rule out things like celiac disease. And that can cause weight loss as well, but it can also cause anemia and other problems like that. And we'd also want to rule out things like inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, which again can present with weight loss, but not always. Most commonly present with lots of diarrhea, often bloody diarrhea, and can also produce a lot of mucus in the bowel. So passing some clear mucus or some yellowy mucus when you're going to the toilet. So those are the sorts of red flag type symptoms I would be looking for. But any digestive pain also needs to be looked at, even if it's higher up in your digestive system. So your gallbladder, for example, and your pancreas sit just underneath your right rib. So you want to be making sure that you're getting to your doctor if you have any pain higher up or lower down.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, as you've just touched on there, Sophie, definitely go and talk to your doctor in the first instance so that then you can hopefully try and rule out some of the things that we've already touched on. But having an unhealthy gut doesn't necessarily mean these serious consequences for you. There can be some less serious, maybe not red flags, but maybe amber flags that maybe it's worth touching on.
Yeah, lots of people will experience low-level, annoying, gripey abdominal symptoms from time to time or every day, some people. And that could be looser stools, it could be constipation, it could be bloating, it could be wind, it could be smelly wind, for example. These are sorts of things that people live with, and generally they would come under the umbrella of IBS or irritable bowel syndrome, which affects up to 20% of people in the UK. So it's a huge problem and many, many people suffer from it, and it can be as debilitating as some of the more serious things we've talked about.
Can having poor gut health be hereditary in some instances?
Well, really interestingly, our microbiome, so the good bacteria that live in our colon, or bad bacteria for that matter, are passed on from parent to child. So your mode of delivery when you're a baby, which you have no control over, whether it's a vaginal delivery or a cesarean section, whether you're breastfed or bottle fed, who you live with in the house, how many toilets are in your house, whether you've got pets, all these things through your very early life seed your microbiome and start that process of it developing. And so many of these things we've got absolutely no control over, right? So it's not even worth worrying about them, as it were. Some conditions of the gut are hereditary, as in your risk factors for having something like celiac disease or Crohn's disease, but actually your microbiome is hugely heritable. And through your life, if you move in with different people, their microbiome will become part of your microbiome and vice versa. And we start to build out our microbiome from other people around us. So university is like a melting pot for all different microbiomes from all over the world. It is heritable, but it's also something that can be changed day to day, week to week.
And are there any things you can do proactively then, before we obviously get onto probiotics, but are there any other things that you can do to improve your gut health?
Absolutely. One of the nicest things about working in gut health is it's a completely movable feast. We can change it depending on what we eat, and our gut will tell us most days whether it's enjoyed what we've eaten or not. So eating plenty of plants is super important, and there's been some new research out suggesting that 30 plants a week is something to aim for. And for some people that might seem crazy and really overwhelming, but actually if you think about those 30 plants also include nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, all of these extra things that perhaps we don't think about. So that might mean that you have porridge in the morning, but you put some mixed seeds on top and maybe a handful of mixed frozen berries from the freezer. And already you can get up to quite a high number of plants just in that breakfast meal. A bowl of mixed vegetable soup at lunchtime, and you're probably nearly at 30 plants already for one day. So it's just about adding that variety of fruits and vegetables in. And the reason for that is that all the different types of bacteria like different types of plants and herbs and spices and all these other things. So the more we can feed the diversity of different bacteria, the better gut health we'll have. So even if you have some of these background symptoms, trying to improve your gut health through your diet is a really important place to start. Your gut also loves gentle exercise, doesn't love HIIT exercise and that kind of adrenaline type exercise so much. It loves it when you drink enough water, and it also prefers us not to be too stressed. So all the things that you would expect, your gut prefers all of those things, sleeping well in addition to those things. Your gut doesn't love ultra-processed foods. It doesn't love it when we're too stressed. It doesn't like it when we're sedentary. The opposite of the things I've described. Alcohol and smoking, obviously also not great for our gut health.
So it is true then, isn't it, that our brain and our gut are linked?
That's a whole other podcast.
Okay, maybe we'll come back onto that one day. I'm sure we will, because I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this who would want to hear that podcast. If we get on to probiotics then, because that is obviously the heart of what we're talking about in this particular episode, how can they help you?
It's really hard to pinpoint exactly how they can help you. What I say to my patients when I'm working in clinic is that they're a really good tool for helping to get more good bacteria into the bowel. So what we find is that people who struggle with bowel symptoms like irritable bowel syndrome, for example, or maybe they've had another bowel condition, often they restrict their diet, and the diet becomes very low in numbers of different plants because they're trying to control their symptoms. So using a probiotic to try and increase the diversity of different bacteria in the bowel is a really valuable and useful tool in that instance. Probiotics are live beneficial bacteria, usually in capsule form, sometimes in liquid form. And there is research in them helping in lots of different things, from irritable bowel syndrome to inflammatory bowel disease, even migraines and mental health, all sorts of interesting areas. And it's really about finding a product that works for you and what you're looking for.
If I think probiotics, I'm probably thinking, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, like the small yogurty drinks. Would that be a probiotic? Chances are?
Yeah, they contain probiotic bacteria for sure. I think for the purposes of this, we're talking about the supplement type ones. So that can be in a liquid, but mostly in capsule form.
Okay, that's really important to know. And one thing obviously that is super important, are there any authorised health claims around probiotics? And also worth reminding everyone listening, what do we mean by authorised health claims?
Yeah. So before a company can put a health claim on its products, it has to submit a dossier of information or evidence to show that that health claim is valid and it works. And then a group of scientists will assess the evidence and either approve or reject that health claim. So when it comes to probiotics, there actually aren't any approved health claims. And that's because it's really hard to prove their benefit. And that's because, what works for me won't necessarily work for Sophie.
But also, when it comes to these authorised health claims, and as you said there, Shefalee, it can be very difficult to prove in this space, but it's not that straightforward either. There's lots of other things going on.
Yeah, exactly. Because there aren't any authorised health claims on probiotics as such, on some products, such as those little mini drinks you were talking about, you might find a health claim, but that's often because the manufacturer's added an extra ingredient, such as zinc or vitamin D, that does have an authorised health claim around immunity, for example. So they'll add a little bit of those vitamins or minerals in so that then they can then put that health claim on a product.
And the legislation around this area is evolving so much that at the moment, manufacturers can't even call a product a probiotic. So the term probiotic has been banned at the moment to protect the consumer because there's so many products out there that aren't actually probiotics or don't have health claims and shouldn't really be calling themselves that. So even though there are some great products in the market, at the moment, the blanket ban is no one can use the term probiotic while we take some time to figure this stuff out.
Now, we are going to get into the probiotics that we, of course, have been looking into here at Which in just a moment. But before we do that, when should you consider taking them?
For the vast majority of people, unless you have some symptoms that are related to your gut health, you probably don't need to take a probiotic, especially if your diet is reasonably balanced and you're getting plenty of plants in. If you are having some of those gut symptoms, or perhaps if you have something like migraines or you're getting intimate health problems if you're a woman, there is some good evidence for considering probiotics in those cases. Same for skin conditions and mental health. So there is some wider applications, but generally if you're not having any problems, you probably don't need a probiotic.
So for anyone who is interested then in looking at probiotics, we'll get into what you should be looking for when you're shopping in a moment. But just before we started recording, you were telling me, it's not just probiotics, there are prebiotics and postbiotics as well. So what are they?
And all are available in supplement form. So prebiotics are food for good bacteria, and we really want people to be getting those from eating plants, from eating fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds, as I mentioned at the beginning. So prebiotics feed good bacteria. Probiotics are the good bacteria themselves, so the live good bacteria. And then postbiotics are the good stuff that probiotic bacteria produce when they ferment prebiotics in your colon.
So it's really straightforward.
So straightforward. Postbiotics are like a little pharmacy of amazing things that these good bacteria are producing in the bowel. And really, the ideal is that we cultivate our microbiome appropriately to produce plenty of these postbiotics ourselves. But sometimes people might benefit from a short time of postbiotic supplementation. But really, that's something you would want to consider under the guidance of a dietitian.
Okay, I mean, it does sound like, again, maybe that's a whole other podcast in itself. We're just stacking up these future podcasts that we're going to be doing. If we go back to probiotics, though, and we will be revealing some of our best buys and the ones that we've been looking into in just a second. But if you are looking at them, if you're going to the shops, what should you be looking for?
What's frustrating for the listeners to this part of the episode is really we're looking for brands. So there are just a few brands on the market that have done adequate research for them to be able to really confidently say they're going to make a difference to symptoms or to problems or just generally influence the microbiome. So essentially it's down to specific brands that have made that investment in research and that are performing better.
So basically what we're saying is make sure you do your research.
Absolutely.
Well, as we've just touched on, that is where the episode ends for our non-members. So for members, if you're listening on which.co.uk, then keep listening. Or if you want to become a Which member, then you can do that very easily. Just click the link in the description for this podcast, wherever you're watching or listening. And you can also become a member by heading to which.co.uk/podcast offer, and you can get 50% off an annual Which subscription. But in the meantime, Shefalee and Sophie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from Which, the UK's consumer champion. You can find plenty more advice about what we discussed today in the show notes. There you'll also find a link to become a Which member for 50% off the usual price, an offer exclusively available to you, our podcast listeners. Joining Which not only gives you access to our product reviews, our app, one-to-one personalised buying advice, and every issue of Which magazine across the year, but you'll also be helping us make life simpler, fairer, and safer for everyone. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you're listening, and that way you'll be notified whenever we release a new episode of Which Money, Which Shorts, or any other podcast that we make for you. And if you want to get in touch with us, then follow us on social media. We are at Which UK, or drop us an email to podcasts@which.co.uk. And we'll see you next time. If you're enjoying this podcast from us here at Which, then why not become a Which member? Right now, we've got a special offer, especially for podcast listeners, meaning you can choose any of our 3 membership tiers for 50% off the usual price. Starting at just £39.50 for a full year, you can get Which magazine delivered direct to your door. For the same price, you could also choose a digital Which subscription, giving you access to all of our product reviews, the Which app, and the digital edition of Which magazine. What's more, you'll also be able to use the Ask Which service for personalised one-to-one buying advice. Or why not get a full access Which subscription for just £49.50 for a full year? Don't forget, that's 50% off the usual price. To join Which or to find out more, just head to which.co.uk/podcast offer. That's which.co.uk/podcast offer, or click the link in the description for today's podcast for 50% off a Which annual subscription.